I still remember the sound. It wasn't just a slap. It was a crack that split the air and my world all at once. The sting spread across my cheek like fire. And for a moment I thought the whole house must have heard it. Maybe the neighbors did. But no one moved. No one breathed. The Thanksgiving turkey sat untouched in the middle of the table, steam curling upward like a ghost. 12 faces turned toward me, his family, every one of them frozen between shock and satisfaction. Maxwell stood above me, his chest rising and falling, his eyes burning with that familiar mixture of fury and pride. "Don't you ever embarrass me in front of my family again," he hissed. The words landed heavier than the slap itself. And then, from the corner of the room, a small voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Daddy." My daughter's voice. Emma stood by the window, her little tablet clutched to her chest, her dark eyes wide and unblinking. In that instant, I swear the whole atmosphere changed. Even Maxwell flinched. The confidence drained from his face. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly, "because now Grandpa is going to see." Those words would change everything. But at that moment, none of them understood what she meant. Not Maxwell. Not his family. Not even me. If I had to trace where it all began, where the path toward this Thanksgiving disaster started, it would be weeks earlier. Maybe even years earlier. In smaller moments. Bruises hidden under sleeves. Apologies whispered in the dark. The lies I told my daughter to keep her world from falling apart. 3 hours before that slap, I'd been standing in the kitchen, basting the turkey like everything was normal. The bruise on my ribs from last week's lesson throbbed with every movement. My hands shook, but I kept them steady. I had to. Maxwell's family would be there soon. And weakness wasn't allowed in front of them. "Thelma, where the hell are my good shoes?" His voice thundered down the stairs. "In the closet." "Honey." "Left side. Bottom shelf." I called back softly. Always softly. The wrong tone could ruin an entire day. Emma sat at the counter, pretending to do homework. I could feel her eyes on me, those observant, knowing eyes that seemed too old for 9 years. She'd learned to read danger the way some kids learn to read bedtime stories, by tone, by footsteps, by silence. "Mom," she asked without looking up, "are you okay?" That question hurt more than the bruise. Because how do you tell your child that you're not okay? That you're terrified of the man who's supposed to protect you? You don't. You lie. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I whispered, forcing a smile. Emma stopped writing. "No, you're not." Before I could answer, I heard him coming down heavy steps. The smell of his cologne. That electric tension that filled every room he entered. "Thelma, the house looks like garbage," he barked. "My mother will be here in an hour. And you can't even." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Emma watching him. For a split second, something human flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. "Emma, go to your room," he ordered. "But Dad, I'm doing homework now." She gathered her books slowly. As she passed me, she squeezed my hand, a small, secret act of rebellion that almost broke me. "Be nice to Mom," she said softly. That tiny sentence drew every ounce of venom out of him. His jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists. "That kid's getting too mouthy," he muttered when she was gone. "She's just protective," I said carefully. "She doesn't like seeing what his voice dropped into that quiet, lethal whisper that always made my stomach twist. "Are you telling her stories about us?" "Thelma, no. Maxwell, I would never." He leaned closer, his breath hot against my face. "Because if you're poisoning my daughter against me, there will be consequences." His daughter, as if I were just the vessel that brought her into the world, as if she didn't share my eyes. My voice, my every heartbeat. The doorbell saved me. And just like that, Maxwell transformed. I watched it happen, the tightening of his tie, the fake smile stretching across his face. The gentle husband, Everyone adored. The switch was terrifying in its perfection. "Showtime," he whispered. "Remember, we're the perfect family." They poured in like royalty, his mother, Jasmine, leading the parade. She kissed me on both cheeks, her perfume thick and sweet enough to choke on. "Oh, Thelma, you've changed the decorations again," she said, eyes scanning the living room. How rustic. I'd spent 3 days making that table look like a magazine spread. Then came his brother Kevin and Kevin's wife, Melissa, both dripping in designer clothes. "Smells good in here," Kevin said, then added under his breath, "For once, Florence," his sister, hugged me tightly, whispering, "You look tired." "Thelma, are you not sleeping well?" Maxwell says stress makes wives age faster. I smiled, nodded, played my part. That's what I did, the obedient wife, the invisible hostess. But from the corner of my eye, I saw Emma watching, always watching. Dinner was an endurance test, disguised as a family gathering. Maxwell basked in their praise while they cut me down piece by piece. Jasmine, with her wine-stained smile, said, "Not everyone's meant for higher education. Maxwell really married down. But he's such a good man for taking care of you." He didn't contradict her. He never did. Florence laughed about the time I'd tried to go back to school nursing. My dream, and Maxwell had to put his foot down. They all laughed. I smiled. I poured more wine. Inside, I was crumbling. Emma didn't laugh. She just sat there, hands in her lap, eyes like dark fire. Then Kevin decided to brag about his wife's promotion. Melissa's making partner next month. She's always been ambitious, not like some people who just exist. That word, exist, it sliced right through me. "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it, because despite everything, I still believed in celebrating other women. "Oh, it is," Jasmine chimed. So refreshing to see a woman with drive and intelligence. "Don't you agree?" Maxwell. And there it was, the moment of truth. Would he defend me? Would he even look at me? He smiled and raised his glass. To strong, successful women. The toast wasn't for me. It never was. I excused myself to the kitchen before my tears betrayed me. Behind the wall. I could still hear them. "She's gotten so sensitive lately." Maxwell was saying, "I don't know how much more drama I can take. You're a saint for putting up with it." Jasmine cooed, and then Emma's voice steady. Small, sharp. "Why do you all hate my mom?" The laughter died instantly. Emma. "Honey, we don't," Maxwell began. "Yes, you do," she said. "You say mean things about her. You make her sad. You make her cry when you think I'm not looking." I pressed my hand against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. "Sweetheart," Jasmine said. "Sometimes adults. My mom is the smartest person I know." Emma interrupted. "She helps me with homework. She builds things. She's kind. Even when you're mean. You don't see her. You just hurt her." I wanted to run to her. I wanted to tell her to stop. To protect her from what was coming. "Emma, that's enough." Maxwell's voice was dangerous now. "No. Daddy. It's not enough that you make Mom sad. It's not enough that you yell at her and call her stupid. It's not enough that you hurt her." My blood went cold. She'd seen it all. "Go to your room," he growled. "I don't want to," I said now. The slap of his palm against the table made the dishes jump. That was when I stepped back into the room. My voice trembled, but I forced it out. "Maxwell, please. She's just a child. She doesn't understand," I said. "Doesn't understand what his face twisted. That her mother is a pathetic, weak, Don't call her that, Emma shouted. Standing now. Shaking, but unafraid. Don't you dare call my mom names. I'll call her whatever I want. What I cut in. My voice breaking through years of silence. You'll hit a 9-year-old in front of your family. Go on. Show them who you really are. The room froze. Maxwell's face went red. How dare you make me look like what you are? He spat. Like someone who hurts his wife. I said. Like someone who terrifies his own child. Then came the slap, the one that started this story. And then came Emma's words, the ones that ended it. Because now Grandpa is going to see. That night, after the slap, and after Emma's words shattered the illusion of control Maxwell had built around himself, the house fell into an eerie quiet. His family sat frozen around the dining table, as if afraid to move, afraid to breathe. I could still feel the heat radiating from my cheek. But it wasn't the pain that stayed with me, it was the stillness that followed. That sharp, suspended silence before everything came undone. Maxwell blinked. Confused. Furious. His confidence slipping for the first time in years. What are you talking about? He barked. His voice cracking just slightly. And that small crack felt like the first fracture in a wall that had taken years to build. Emma didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't even look afraid. My little girl, who used to hide behind the couch whenever his voice rose, stood there like a soldier, her chin tilted slightly upward. I've been recording you, she said. Her voice calm. Too calm. For weeks. And I sent everything to Grandpa this morning. The color drained from Maxwell's face. Around us. Forks clattered. Cher scraped. The sound of a family realizing they'd just witnessed the beginning of their own undoing. Jasmine, his mother, opened her mouth. But no sound came out. Kevin's smirk vanished. Florence's eyes darted from her brother to me to Emma, as if trying to calculate which side of this explosion might be safest to stand on. Maxwell took one slow step toward Emma. You wouldn't. Emma raised the tablet higher. Her little fingers steady. He said to tell you. She continued, her voice lowering into something cold and certain. That real men don't hurt women and children. And he's on his way. That was when Maxwell's mask cracked completely. His hands dropped. His face twisted into disbelief and rage. He looked at me as though I'd planned this, like I'd weaponized my own child against him. But the truth was, I hadn't planned anything. Emma had. If only I'd understood sooner. A month earlier, she'd come into my room holding that same tablet, telling me her class had a project on family dynamics. At the time, I'd smiled and told her it sounded fun. We have to document how families communicate, she'd said carefully. Record conversations. Show how people treat each other. I remember feeling a chill even then. Some things that happen in families are private. I'd told her gently, not everything needs to be recorded. But Emma wasn't a normal 9-year-old. She'd seen too much. She knew too much. Mrs. Andre says documentation helps people understand what's really happening, she'd said softly. Like she wasn't just talking about homework. It can also protect people. That word protect stayed with me. That night, after Maxwell's latest rage fit over the wrong brand of coffee, she came to my room. I was sitting on the bed with an ice pack pressed to my shoulder where his hand had left fresh bruises. She closed the door behind her and sat down beside me. Mom, she whispered. I know he hurts you. You don't have to pretend anymore. My throat closed. I wanted to tell her not to worry, to let me handle it. But what could I say to a child who had already seen the truth? She lifted her tablet. I've been recording him. When he yells. When he throws things. When he hurts you. Emma. You can't. I have to. Her voice didn't shake. I won't let him hurt you anymore. I have a plan. When she said that, I felt something break inside me, not fear this time, but shame. Shame that my child had to become the protector. Over the next few weeks, I watched her in quiet disbelief. She moved like someone with a mission, careful and precise. The tablet was always somewhere nearby, leaning against books, hidden behind flowers, resting on a shelf. Maxwell never noticed. He was too consumed by himself. She never filmed long, just enough to capture the truth. A shove, a yell, a cruel word. Sometimes just his tone was enough to make me flinch when she replayed it. I begged her to stop, but she only said, "Someone has to be brave." "Mom, Grandpa says bullies only understand consequences." Grandpa, my father, Colonel James Mitchell. I'd spent years hiding the truth from him. "He adored Emma," called her every Sunday. He thought we were happy. That was the lie I protected with every bruise I covered and every smile I faked. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I overheard her on the phone with him. "Grandpa," she said, "what would you do if someone was hurting Mom?" My father's voice softened immediately. "Emma, sweetheart, is someone hurting your mom?" She hesitated. "Just hypothetically." "Well," he said, "if anyone ever hurt your mother, they'd have to answer to me. No one lays a hand on my girls. You understand." I remember standing outside her door, my heart pounding. She'd smiled when he said that. I knew then she wasn't asking a question. She was confirming a plan. The morning of Thanksgiving, Emma was unnervingly calm. I should have known something was coming. While I rushed around cooking, she sat at the table, eating cereal, eyes quietly following every move Maxwell made. He was in rare form that morning. The pressure of entertaining his family turned him into a storm waiting to happen. "Remember," he said, straightening his tie in front of the hallway mirror. "Today we are the perfect family. Loving husband, devoted wife, well-behaved child. Can you manage that?" "Thelma." "Yes," I whispered. He turned to Emma. "And you know attitude today. Children should be seen, not heard." Emma smiled, small and polite. "I understand. Daddy." If I'd been paying attention, I would have noticed the way she said it. Not submission strategy. When his family arrived, the house filled with laughter that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Jasmine handed me a bottle of wine, like it was an award for surviving her son. "Thelma, dear, you really must do something about those gray roots," she said sweetly. "Maxwell works so hard. The least you can do is take care of yourself." Maxwell actually laughed. "Mom's right. I keep telling her she's letting herself go." I wanted to sink into the floor, but when I looked toward Emma, she wasn't looking at me, she was looking at him. Recording quietly under the table. It all played out the same way it always did. Snide comments, forced smiles, me trying to hold the pieces together. But this time was different. This time, Emma was collecting every insult. Every act of cruelty like evidence in a trial only she knew was coming. By the time dinner ended, I was trembling with exhaustion. They'd chipped away at me all night until there was nothing left. And when I finally spoke up, when I finally told them I was tired of pretending, Maxwell lost control. The slap was his last act of power. But what came next was his downfall. As Emma's words sank in, the sound of engines outside cut through the tension. Headlights flashed through the windows. Tires crunched against gravel. Jasmine frowned. Who could that be? Emma didn't move. She just said softly, "He's here." Then the front door burst open. My father filled the doorway like a storm in human form. Behind him stood 2 men from his base, both broad, both silent, both radiating authority. The look on Maxwell's face when he saw them was almost worth every bruise I'd ever hidden. "Colonel Mitchell," he stammered. This is unexpected." My father's voice was quiet, deadly calm. "Sit down." Maxwell hesitated. I said, "Sit." And for the first time in years, Maxwell obeyed a command without question. He sat, trembling slightly. his confident facade finally stripped away. I'd never seen him look small before, not even when he'd been cruel. Not even when I'd begged him to stop. But now, sitting under the weight of my father's stare, Maxwell looked like the child he'd always been inside a coward, pretending to be a man. My father stood at the head of the table, his eyes moving slowly from Maxwell to me, then to Emma, who stood near the doorway clutching her tablet like a sacred artifact. "Emma," he said, and his voice softened in a way that made my throat ache. "Are you all right?" "Yes, Grandpa," she said. "But Mom's hurt." Again. The word again hit him like a bullet. His jaw tightened. His shoulders straightened. "Let me see," he said, when his calloused fingers brushed the side of my face. The tenderness nearly broke me. He'd spent a lifetime commanding soldiers, navigating war zones, burying emotion. But now, looking at the red mark across my cheek, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen since I was a child, helpless rage. "How long has this been happening?" "Thelma, 3 years. The truth wanted to stay buried. But Emma's steady presence beside me forced it out. 3 years. I whispered. My father exhaled slowly through his nose. The air in the room grew heavier with each heartbeat. 3 years you've been hitting my daughter, he said finally, turning back to Maxwell, his voice deceptively calm. Maxwell tried to speak, but no sound came. When he did, his words stumbled out like excuses. "Sir, it's not what you think. You don't understand. 3 years. My father repeated, stepping closer. "You've been terrorizing my granddaughter." "I never touched Emma, I swear. Do you think she needed to be hit to be hurt?" My father's voice cracked like a whip. "You think a child watching her mother being destroyed day after day doesn't leave scars deeper than any bruise?" Maxwell's mother, Jasmine, finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Colonel Mitchell, please, let's not do this here. We can discuss this like civilized." My father turned to her, and the look in his eyes silenced her instantly. "Mrs. Whitman, you sat in this room. You called my daughter stupid, worthless. Lucky your son tolerated her. You enabled every bruise on her body, every tear your granddaughter cried. You are complicit." Jasmine pressed her trembling hands together, tears forming. "We didn't know." "You knew," Emma said softly. Her small voice cut through the room like a blade. "You just didn't care." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then one of the men behind my father, a tall officer I recognized from a military function, stepped forward and placed a folder on the table. "We've reviewed the evidence," he said in a clipped tone. "Video documentation of physical assaults, audio of verbal abuse, medical reports correlating with visible injuries." Maxwell's head snapped toward me. "You gave them that, my private, medical—" "I signed every release," I said quietly. "You made sure the doctors believed every fall, every accident. You made me lie. I won't lie anymore." My father's gaze never left Maxwell. "You broke my daughter's bones. Her trust. Her spirit. You made her small so you could feel big. I should break you in half for that." Maxwell's eyes darted toward the door like a trapped animal's. "This is insane. You can't just barge in here like this." "Watch me," my father said, coldly. The female officer, Captain Torres. I remembered her now, stepped forward, holding a stack of papers. "Mr. Whitman, this is a court-ordered temporary restraining order. Effective immediately. You are to have no contact with your wife or daughter. You are to vacate this property within the hour." Maxwell's face turned scarlet. "This is my house," he roared. "No," Torres said, glancing at the documents. "It's jointly owned, but as the victim of documented domestic abuse, Mrs. Whitman has been granted exclusive occupancy." Jasmine gasped, clutching at her pearls as if the jewelry could keep her world from collapsing. Kevin stood up abruptly. "We're leaving," he muttered. I can't be part of this. Kevin, Maxwell begged. You can't just. But Florence had already stood. He's right, she said flatly. Family protects each other. You don't get to call us family anymore. One by one. They left. Jasmine lingered for a moment, her face streaked with tears, before whispering, Your grandfather would be ashamed. Maxwell. Then she was gone too. The house that had been filled with judgment and laughter only hours ago was now silent except for the sound of Maxwell's ragged breathing. My father stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. Pack a bag, he said quietly. You and Emma are coming home with me tonight. Dad, my voice cracked. This is our home. No, Emma said softly from beside me. This was our prison. Grandpa's house is home. She was right. She was always right. Maxwell sat slumped at the table, staring at the wreckage of his perfect world. His voice came out hoarse. Desperate. Thelma. Please, I can change. Don't destroy our family over this. I turned toward him, and for the first time, I saw him clearly not as the man I'd loved once, not as the monster I'd feared, but as the hollow shell of both. Our family, I said. You destroyed that the first time you raised your hand to me. It wasn't that bad, he whispered. Daddy, Emma said, her voice trembling but steady. I have 43 days of videos that say it was exactly that bad. His shoulders sagged. Something inside him broke maybe the illusion that he was still in control. Emma, I'm your father, he said weakly. She looked at him with eyes too old for her age. No, she said. Fathers protect their families. Fathers make their kids feel safe. You're just the man who used to live here. He looked like he'd been struck again, but this time by the truth. That night, Emma and I left the house for good. As I locked the door behind me, I didn't feel fear or guilt or even sorrow. I felt the faintest pulse of something I hadn't felt in years, freedom. We stayed with my father for months. He made hot chocolate every morning and never once asked me why I hadn't called sooner. He just said, You did what you had to do. Now it's over. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The next few weeks were a blur of court hearings, statements, questions from social workers, and therapists who gently peeled away the layers of fear Emma and I had worn like second skin. Maxwell tried to fight the restraining order, but the videos spoke louder than any excuse he could invent. The judge watched in silence, his expression darkening with every clip. When it was over, he sentenced Maxwell to 2 years in prison and mandated therapy and supervised visitation. The relief I felt wasn't joy, it was release. A slow, steady exhale after years of holding my breath. One afternoon, weeks later, Emma found me sitting in the backyard of my father's house, staring at the sunset. She sat beside me and rested her head on my arm. Mom, she said softly, do you think we're safe now? I looked at her and smiled. Yes, sweetheart, we're safe now. But even then, I knew safety wasn't something you returned to. It was something you rebuilt, piece by fragile piece. 6 months passed before I could look in the mirror without flinching. At first, I thought it was just habit, the way my body would brace, expecting his shadow to appear behind me, expecting his voice to slice through the air like it always had. But even after the bruises faded, the fear lingered. Fear has muscle memory. It remembers even when you don't want it to. We moved into a small apartment near the hospital where I'd started my new nursing classes. It wasn't fancy, but it had sunlight, real sunlight, that reached every corner of the living room. No dark hallways, no heavy curtains, no silence that felt like danger. For the first time in years, Emma and I didn't have to tiptoe. We could laugh. We could breathe. We could exist. Maxwell was in prison by then, convicted of domestic abuse, assault, and endangerment. 2 years. They said. 2 years felt like nothing compared to the 3 he'd taken from us. But it was enough. Enough for Emma to sleep without nightmares. Enough for me to rebuild who I'd been before him. One afternoon, while I was studying in the kitchen, Emma looked up from her homework and said, "Mrs. Andre wants to know if you'll talk to our class about resilience." He blinked. "Me? Yeah," she said, smiling shyly. "She told everyone how brave you are. How you left when it was hard." I laughed softly. What would I even say? Emma tapped her pencil against her notebook. Maybe that being strong doesn't mean staying quiet. Maybe that sometimes protecting someone means being brave enough to ask for help. Her words stunned me. I stared at her, this 9-year-old girl who had seen too much, who had carried a war inside her tiny body, and still somehow found gentleness left to give. "When did you get so wise?" I asked. She shrugged. "You were always wise. Mom, you just forgot for a while." That night, I lay awake for hours replaying everything we'd survived. The yelling, the lies, the way fear had disguised itself as routine. I realized how easy it had been to call it normal. Abuse doesn't always announce itself with bruises. Sometimes it's in the way you stop laughing, or the way you start apologizing for breathing. The next morning, I called Mrs. Andre and agreed to speak to her class. It's strange how life begins again quietly, without fanfare. I thought freedom would come with fireworks, but it came in the form of small, ordinary things. Coffee that stayed warm long enough to drink, the hum of the washing machine, Emma humming while brushing her hair before school. Each sound meant safety. Each sound meant life. Sometimes, though, I'd catch Emma watching me with that same observant expression she'd had since she was little. She didn't trust peace yet, and neither did I. We were learning together. My father visited every weekend. He brought groceries and stories from the base, still calling Emma Private Mitchell, and making her laugh until she snorted milk through her nose. He never mentioned Maxwell by name. He didn't need to. His silence about that man said everything. One evening, while we were cleaning up dinner, Emma asked quietly, "Do you miss him?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I thought about it, the man I'd fallen in love with before everything changed. The man who'd once brought me flowers after his first promotion, who used to kiss my forehead and say, "You're my peace." Maybe he'd meant it. Maybe that was the problem. I was his peace until I wasn't. "I don't miss him," I said finally. "I miss who I thought he was. But I like who we are now more." Emma smiled. "Me too." A year later, I graduated from nursing school. My father sat in the front row, his chest puffed with pride, clapping the loudest when they called my name. Emma waved her phone in the air, recording everything, just like she had before. But this time, it wasn't for evidence. It was for memory. After the ceremony, she ran up to me and threw her arms around my waist. "You did it." "No, sweetheart," I said, kissing her hair. "We did it." That night, while she slept, I stood by her door for a long time just listening to her breathe. The steady rhythm of her sleep was like a song I never wanted to stop hearing. But even freedom carries echoes. Some nights, I'd dream I was still in that old house, his footsteps pounding down the stairs, his voice breaking the air. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, until I felt the weight of Emma's safety blanket draped over me, her quiet way of saying, "I'm here. We're safe." 3 years later, Emma was 12, taller now, sharper, still fiercely protective. One evening, she came home from school looking serious. She sat at the table, opened her backpack, and placed an old tablet in front of me, the same one she'd used to record everything. "I didn't delete the videos," she said softly. "You thought I did, but I didn't." I froze. "Emma, they're safe," she continued, "encrypted and stored in 3 places. Mrs. Andre taught me how. She says I have good instincts for justice." I wanted to be angry, but I couldn't. The truth was, I was grateful. grateful that my daughter had learned to protect herself in a world that hadn't protected me. She looked at me then. Expression unreadable. He writes, sometimes. My chest tightened. Maxwell. She nodded. Letters from prison. He says he's changed. He asks if I'll forgive him. I swallowed hard. And will you? She looked down at her hands. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't hate him, Mom, but I remember everything. I reached across the table and took her hand. You don't owe him forgiveness. You owe yourself peace. She squeezed my hand. I think I already have that. Months later, Emma told me about a girl in her class whose stepfather yelled and broke things. She's scared. Mom, Emma said. She asked what she should do. My heart clenched. What did you tell her? I gave her my old tablet. She said quietly. And I told her. You're not tattling. You're gathering evidence. Evidence is power. I wanted to cry. I wanted to tell her she shouldn't have to be that brave again, but she just looked at me and said, That's what we do. Right, we protect people who can't protect themselves. She was right. That's what our family does. That's what we became the night she stood up to her father. Sometimes, when the past creeps in, I remind myself of what my father said after the trial. Revenge isn't always rage. Thelma. Sometimes it's peace. Sometimes it's living well when they expected you to break. And maybe he's right. Because even now, years later, when the world grows quiet and I catch my reflection in the mirror, I don't see the scared woman I used to be. I see someone reborn in the ruins. Someone who found her strength in the voice of a 9-year-old girl with a tablet and a plan. If you've listened this far, thank you. If you've ever felt small, unheard, or afraid, please know you're not alone. There's a way out. There's always a way out. If my story touched you, please, like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring stories like mine, the ones that hurt, heal, and remind us of our strength to life. And tell me in the comments, what does courage mean to you?